we've been working closely with ReUp, an organization with a tagline to reimagine the adult learner experience. Through our innovative statewide partnership, ReUp has helped us to do just that in a quick time span with a partnership of 17 institutions in the initial cohort. I do want to recognize the 17 institutions that have been participating in the initiative in this pilot year. And if you are one of those institutions or subject matter experts within those institutions who has helped, would you mind quickly raising your hand? I know there's 17 of you and you all are in this room, so. All right. Thank you so much for your time and work, and again, for answering my many emails. With that, I'm excited to welcome Christine Wyatt, who braved the weather yesterday with the flights. She has 27 years of experience in higher education and serves as Chief Operating Officer at ReUp. She will be presenting solo. I know in our brochure you'll see that there was a team of 4. They're here with us in spirit, but unfortunately their flights got grounded. And they will be presenting on empirical insights, student stories, the New Jersey Some College No Degree experience. Thank you.
All right, thank you all so much. If you can't hear me, let me know. I'm a little soft-spoken. Don't let that fool you. So I wanted to just tell you a little bit about ReUp and also acknowledge the 17 different institutions who have opted in, and OSHE and the support from Secretary Bridges. I know that you all didn't have to pay ReUp to work with you, but the time you spent is, in my mind, one of the most valuable things that you have. And I started out in education. I started out in information technology way back in the day, and then I started teaching. And so I've been in your shoes. I've worked in some of the small institutions, some of the larger ones, community college, online, a little bit of everything before partnering with different startups that work in service of all of you and the learners. So ReUp was founded in 2015, and we're one of the only companies that really focuses on this population. So we are learner-centric, data-driven. Everything we do, the learner is first and foremost, and we try to make the best decisions we have with data. So we'll be talking about, instead of this foundation of national data, we're going to drill that down to New Jersey. I will, in some cases, share some things we know from working with over 80 institutions across the United States. But really, we're here just to support you in supporting the Some College No Degree or No Credential, which I love because it's so inclusive population. All right, these are my colleagues who are here in spirit. I wanted to keep this slide here because my colleagues, Dr. Kylie Larson, Dr. Christina Savage, and Virginia Bagley all contributed to this and to other initiatives and other things that we have contributed to this initiative. And I know some of you work with Kylie and Christina on the regular basis. They were so sorry they couldn't be here, but I wanted to leave this up because they all did contribute. So I want to talk for a moment about why this Some College No Degree or No Credential initiative really matters. As we learned this morning, it's somewhere between 750 and 1 million Some College No Degree learners in the state of New Jersey alone. So through this initiative, our role really is to kind of reignite adult learners' belief in their ability to go back and finish what they started, and you're going to hear more about that later. So we're supporting learners in realizing, in many cases, the new opportunities available to them since they left. We typically will work with these learners 10 years, sometimes more than 10 years, since their last date of enrollment. And there are many new opportunities for them that they just maybe aren't aware of. And so that's part of what we do. One of the first things we do is we get to know the state and the statewide initiatives, and then we get to know the 17 institutions and any individual opportunities they have, programs, policies, might be in support of these learners. So some of these things we're going to learn more about. It is going to be interactive. I'm going to keep that going today. The first thing I really wanted to do was to ask Stephen Eck, the Executive Director, University Admissions from New Jersey Institute of Technology, to speak about a recent event they had called Rock and Re-Enroll. Oh, sorry, excuse me, to speak about the focus on some college, no degree learners, which I think you all have been waiting to do for a while. So, Stephen.
Hi, how are you? So briefly, I would just want to say we appreciate the opportunity to engage with these students at NJIT. We, about 5 years ago, started a similar initiative within the enrollment area, and we engaged with students who had stopped out. But as you can all, I think, understand that the resources that we had to engage with these students, we were limited. So we had modest success. So we really appreciate the opportunity to engage with some college no degree, specifically with ReUp, to help us get through this process of re-engaging. So far, we've had some modest success. We've seen on our side about a dozen or so students who have applied and have been admitted. Of those students, one was a transfer student from one of our local community colleges. The rest were previously attended NJIT. And I know through our conversations with ReUp, we have a number of students that are in the pipeline. So right now, we would say it's a great partnership, very communicative in terms of sharing information, sharing data with them on a daily basis. And we're looking forward, hopefully, that this initiative continues to grow and we can see some students coming back to NJIT and benefiting the state of New Jersey. So I appreciate the opportunity to say some words. So thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you so much. Oops, sorry. So I wanted to tell you a little bit about what we're doing when we partner with the 17 institution in service of these learners. First, this population is difficult to find. They're difficult to engage, and they have barriers before, in many cases, they can re-enroll. So that's where we start. So we get stop-out lists from the institutions. We append those lists. We clean them up. We load them into our systems. And then our outreach team use segmentation and personas that come from the different stop-out list parameters so that we know which students are most likely to have which questions and need which content and may have which barriers they need to remediate. And so they get kind of a customized path that they walk through. And so once we start to outreach these students, sometimes the same day they'll raise their hand and say, I'm interested in working with a success coach. So we ask them a number of questions on what we call kind of top of the funnel, which is everybody on the stop-out list. And we're trying to get to know them quickly so that we put information in front of them that's relevant and puts them on a path to success as fast as we possibly can. So we'll see some of the results of those questions, which I find really fascinating. I'm happy to answer all your questions. There'll be a few I may have to go back and look at because we're still learning. We just kicked off on April 4th. I'm so excited to be able to share some of those initial thoughts, initial data points, so that it'll get you thinking too about this population. So as they raise their hand, we pair them with success coaches. And our success coaches, I can't say enough about them. We have more success coaches than anything in the company. They're the bulk of our employees at the company. And they are, by and large, first-generation students, many of them, including our CEO, are stop-outs who have returned. They understand this journey and the challenges and the opportunities on a very personal level. And we're going to hear some clips later about students that are working with their success coaches. So they continue to kind of walk beside them. I think of them as like a navigator. And what we try to do is we get to know the institutions that have opted in. We start to kind of figure out where to start with these students. And while we can't help them, we don't do things like sit down and fill out the FAFSA with them, but we can tell them they need to fill it out every year. If they get stuck, we can point them to the exact right person on campus. So having that single point of contact for every campus and within these functional areas, it's huge. I can't underscore that enough. A lot of what happens to students trying to get back is they just get lost in the process. Many of those processes were just built for 18-year-olds who, if they're lucky and they're privileged, have somebody to help them walk through that. but I've also spoken to community college presidents. This was one in Florida, not in New Jersey, who sat down with their son and tried to enroll him for the first time. Couldn't do it on our own college's website. It's not always built for adult learners. It's not always built, for those of us who are over 35 or maybe even 45. So keep those things in mind as you're designing those different resources. So we take all of these touch points, and you'd be amazed how many there have already been since April 4th, and we float up these trends. And we're going to see more about that in today's presentation, so I don't want to say more. This combination of outreach, segmentation, personas, inbound information that's either comes from the list that tells us about the student or that they self-report. This helps us know what the right intervention is for the right student at the right time, and that's where our technology comes in. We won't talk a lot about technology today, but that's how we leverage it. So before we move on, I want to ask Juliet Pontilla, would you be willing to say a little bit about just this experience and maybe what you've learned thus far? Anything else you want to add?
Great, thank you, Christine. Thank you, everyone. So yes, Thomas Edison State University has been created, designed specifically for this audience, so we're thrilled to be part of the ReUp initiative. So far, we have received over 100 students back through this pipeline. Now, Thomas Edison is known for being an institution where students are always welcome to come back, stop-outs, swirlers, dropouts. We know that that's what the adult student experience is. So we have designed steps throughout the process to guide those students to easily come back, to connect with me specifically if they need anything. The great point is that our entire institution has been designed to assist these students. So if there is any hiccup along the way, then you can bet somebody else there knows exactly how to guide them. And we understand the importance of assisting these 750,000 New Jerseyans to earn their degree, not only for their own personal fulfillment and their families' advancement, but also to support the state economy and all of the employers and organizations. Thank you.
Very well said. Thank you, Julia. One other anecdotal point I'll give you, again, not in New Jersey, but really, really relevant. We also work with UNC System on something called Project Kitty Hawk. We're a similar partner there. And one of the things that has been really motivating to the institutions, the system, and the state is to recoup these 60,000 plus students, many of whom are adult learners who go to online colleges outside of the UNC system and in fact outside of the state of North Carolina. So those programs are often available in state. Students don't know about them, or the schools they end up going to have really been hyper-focused on eliminating as much friction in that path back as they can. We're going to talk about that when we get the policy section, but I bring that up because we want to keep those students here in New Jersey. We know that you can serve them well. You have a tremendous amount invested in them and in the infrastructure and your programs. Sometimes it's just about reducing that friction. All right, we've talked a lot about our current New Jersey partners, and so I did want to certainly give them another shout out here, but also I wanted to give a third opportunity here for Jose Laureano to talk about a recent event. I love this event, super excited to hear about it. It was called the Rock and Re-Enrollment.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Jose Laureano. I am the Executive Dean for Student and Enrollment Services here at Middlesex College. So on June 10th, June 10th, between 10 and 1 p.m., we had this event called Rock and Roll, which was conceived by my director here of Enrollment Services and my director of Academic, Career, and Transfer Services, Ria Gaviria, who couldn't be here today. And so we wanted to have a fun event where we would bring students, prospective students, and their families onto campus, and we had a DJ, we provided food, we had our mascot show up, scared some of the kids, made them cry. But it was an opportunity for the kids, the family members to be entertained while the parent actually met with one of our team members. We had admissions, financial aid, a team of advisors, all present to basically register students on the spot. So we had 26 students that participated, And I'm glad to report that as of yesterday, 22 of the 26 are registered for the fall. So we've had some great success with that. Moving forward, of course, we want to institutionalize this program now. So every year now, we plan to do ROC and re-enroll. Overall, we've had about 210 students that have some application activity. And as of yesterday as well, we registered 98 new students for the fall, thanks to the partnership again with ReUp. So, thank you.
Thank you. I love the innovation around that event. I love that there's something for kids. These learners are going to show up their whole selves, and that means bringing their family. And I love, too, this idea of the necessity, even if it's anecdotal over time, we will be able to measure some of these things, but this idea of a sense of belonging. So having affinity groups for returning students or, there's one for mothers, I love that too. That's extra hard going back, especially if you're the primary caregiver. But I kind of wanted to highlight just a few things. I wish I had more time because there are so many great things that have been dreamt up and brought to life by people in this room to reduce those barriers. But just a few I wanted to share with you. We've seen across some of the different 17 institutions that have worked with us since April, this willingness of schools to reduce those barriers to reentries by doing things that might seem small that make a big outsized impact. And one of those is things like removing application fees for returning learners. It may not seem like a big gesture, but it makes a huge difference. In previous companies I've been with where we were focused on non-traditional students and retention, sometimes retention and persistence came down to the ability to pay a car repair bill or the next installment on your tuition. So anything, even if it seems like a small thing, could be a big barrier for this population. I want to acknowledge that. Another one has been lifting registration holds for learners with a balance of $600 or less to allow them to re-enroll, and once re-enrolled, eliminating that past due balance of $600 or less to eliminate that financial barrier to re-enrollment. A final one, multiple institutions are having these open house events focused on the some college, no degree, no credential population. In fact, you just heard about ROC and re-enroll. I love that it's been so successful. It's going to be an annual event. It's only going to get bigger and better. So I think that's wonderful. All right, let's talk a little bit about some of the early performance indicators. Why is it early? We kicked off with a handful of schools on April 4th. And I think every week since then, except for one, we've launched at least one, but usually multiple new schools who have opted in. So we've outreached 84,056 students. About 6,400 of them have engaged with us, meaning they've responded to an SMS, which, by the way, shouldn't surprise you. Our SMS response rate is really, really high, and our qualification rate across the nation is high through SMS. So it's another thing I would encourage you to think about if you have the ability or the intent to reach out to this population via SMS. Very responsive, high qualification rate across the board that we've seen at ReUp. 348 have enrolled. I'm guessing this number is already out of date, which I love. But since launching this initiative, we've outreached all these learners. We have more coming. And these are just some kind of top-level indicators of performance. I do want to talk more about what we've been up to. Over this time, we have had so many connection points with your New Jersey, some college, no degree, no credential population. And I want to talk to you a little bit about what we've been up to. We've had over 1 million touch points. This includes meetings and phone calls, texts, and emails since outreach began in 2023. So this is one of the reasons why I think if you're thinking about partnering, it may make sense. We just have the ability to do this at scale and then bring those data points back, identify trends, and then constantly iterate. Sometimes we'll send a message out on Monday. We have multiple launches per week. On Wednesday, we want to see some changes in that language, things resonated. We'll change it by Wednesday. We record those results, whether it was plus minus, and go from there. We're constantly innovating and iterating. We have the technology to do that. But I'm super thrilled already. I can't wait to see what this looks like over time. So let's get into the data. So we saw the national kind of platform of what we're seeing nationally and some trends there. This is all your data. It's all New Jersey data. If I say anything that's related nationally that we see personally on the ReUp front, I'll make sure and call that out. Again, very consistent with what Jen showed earlier today. In the blue, let me orient you, is all of the learners, so everybody, versus those who have engaged. So those who have responded, maybe made a session with a coach, maybe send us an email. You can see it's heavily weighted, 25 to 34. About 80%, this list is 25 years of age or older. So the purple are the ones that have engaged. You also see very interesting trends there, same kind of thing, 25 to 34, very engaged, even more so, 35 to 49 age group is even more engaged. Let's talk about gender for just a moment. So again, not surprising probably to you, the distribution between female and male in this population. What may surprise you is, the females more engaged out of the gate. Now I want to say one caveat. These numbers will continue to change, and in some cases they will balance out over time. And this is one of the spots where we may see these purple bars kind of come closer together. But we also see that females are more likely to respond faster than males. For whatever reason, these are one of the things that we can measure over time. We just don't have enough data yet, but I found this interesting. But again, very much in alignment, I think, with national standards here. Race, ethnicity. This one I wanted to call out because Jennifer gave us some great trends this morning earlier as well. The blue, again, is percentage of the total stop-out list that we've received, which is about 159,000 different people. And then the purple is the percentage of those who qualified, right? So he engaged with us and have some intent to return, but we haven't yet decided with them, like, hey, is that now? Is it later? They have that intent. Look at these numbers for Black and Latinx. They are disproportionately more engaged than they represent in terms of percentage of the overall stop-out list. I'm going to pause here. Nobody's asked a single question yet, so I just want to make sure. Okay. Years out of school, again, pretty consistent in terms of the percentage of total. It's right there between, 5 to 9 is half of the entire list. You see it drops precipitously when we go past 10 years. That's one of the reasons we as an organization kind of focus on 1 to 10, but we don't stop there. If you gave us learners who stopped out more than 10 years ago, they're absolutely being outreached. We just know that the longer you've been out, statistically, but not always, we have some wonderful outliers, less likely you are to come back. 69% of those in that 0 to 4 years, we call it LDA, last date of enrollment or admission, have engaged. So the one thing I would say about this is that ReUp as a company works 1 to 10 because we know people will continue to come back if they know there's an opportunity, if someone engages them, if someone talks to them about their pathways, and again, new opportunities to come back. But those that are 0 to 4, it's top of mind. They may have stopped out 6 months or a year ago. I know a lot of colleges and universities focus on that group, and that's wonderful. They're highly engaged. They're likely to come back. We just run the gambit because we don't know who it is in the beginning. We have some technology over time that tells us with predictive analytics, but we can tell you some of those people, 10 plus years, will still come back. So send us all of your learners. We will treat them equally. They get the same amount of outreach. Everyone gets the opportunity to work with a coach through degree or certificate completion. And a really high number of folks who engage with us do actually want want to work with a coach. This one was fascinating to me because I don't think this matches what we see in other populations. And again, over time, anything that piques our interest and probably piques yours, we're going to dig into, and we may have more information over time. But when we asked people if they wanted to come back, if they're interested in looking at a path back, those who engaged and said, yes, I'm at least interested in exploring my options, 43% wanted to return ASAP. ASAP is fall. It really is soon. So that sense of immediacy, that sense of urgency was really interesting to us. It's a little higher than we typically would see. 6 to 12 months represented the other 22%, and then we have 35% are unsure of their return timeline. Many times people are just unsure because they want to come back. They just don't know what their barriers are and the steps are to get back, so they don't know how to commit to a time frame, and that's where our coaches really get involved and help them figure out what their barriers might be. If, a path back to the original institution, which, by the way, 78% of those who engaged and said they're interested in going back, 78% said they really would like a path back to their original institution. Sometimes there's not a feasible path back, but as an institution or organization, I should say, we explore that with them first. Only if that's not a viable path back do we then give them other options. I thought that might be interesting and also just important to note. This is one of my favorites to talk about, and we talk about it often. We're really, really interested in what Secretary Bridges mentioned earlier, which is understanding the people behind the data. So one of the things that surprised me, I joined ReUp a little over a year ago, is this is true across the board. We have almost a million learners in our database that we've worked with. This is always the number one reason. So again, early on, we asked them in that kind of top of funnel, kind of intake period, what motivates you? Why did you stop out? Why do you want to go back? What are your barriers? What do you think they are? And then we ask them a lot of other things like timeline and what's your family support, what's your work support like? What's your relationship like with your institution? Was it positive, negative, neutral? All of these things help us guide them to the best path back. But this is, number one, is this intrinsically motivated answer. It's personal, it's finish what I started. So when I started at ReUp, I thought, okay, they want to finish what they started because they have a financial goal or it's to advance a degree, and all those things are true, but you'll notice those are all choices here. And they didn't choose that with the same frequency, so it's really interesting to me. In particular, this group is really intrinsically motivated. It's personal, so that's one of the things that I would ask all of you, because I know you already know, returning to them is more than a transaction. Yes, there are financial barriers. Yes, there are very real time constraints for them as generally adult learners, but it's personal. It's something they want to achieve. I've heard many, many of these learners in coaching sessions say, I'm setting an example for my family, for my extended family. I want my children to see that I finished this. I want them to go down the same path. I want to normalize this for them. And so I'm going to return because it's important to me to finish what I started. Next, we have this flip side of the same coin. We always ask them, what do you think is keeping you from returning, or what has historically kept you from returning? Number one is cost or financing. So I think that's two different things you can think about. We couple them together at this level, but it's that ability to pay for the education, or in some cases, you may find things folded up, like I have a previous balance that I was unable to pay. Sometimes this surprises learners. I know those of us who are in administration are like, how can they be surprised? They're surprised that sometimes if they just stop and didn't withdraw, that they ended up with one or more Fs. So they just don't know. Sometimes the life circumstances pull them out immediately. School is really important, but family often comes first. So the second one is balancing my time. And we often interpret this to say, okay, do I have the time to attend the class and to do the coursework and also go to work, also care about my family, also take care of maybe older family members? And I honestly think number 1 and 2 are really, really strongly correlated because time is money. Not everyone has the opportunity to have consistent childcare, Not everyone has flexibility at work. Not everyone works remotely. You have to commute. So that time is a huge factor. If you can wave a magic wand and say, well, I get daycare every day and I have reliable way to work, or I don't have to commute, maybe I can just work from home. Most people don't have those options. Options are privilege. Balancing my time is huge. Another one, having online or hybrid options, 9%. This is one I'll call out, something that we're seeing at a more of a national level at ReUp, which is a very high percentage of returners want hybrid options. That surprised me a little. I thought, hey, you need flexibility. It's all about time management. It's about time poverty. You want that flexibility. But most of them, even in this group that we've seen quite a few, 22%, they want that ability to go on campus. So geography still matters. Distance still matters. Having that hybrid option also gives them help when they need it. So a lot of adult learners I've worked with on the academic side will come to campus, and that's when they get their homework done. That's where they get unstuck. That's where they work on research projects, and that's where they get that sense of belonging. So that idea of having something hybrid, I think at least in my mind, I thought a lot, okay, we're trending toward more purely online programs, and that's still important. A lot of people want that. But it surprised me how many were really, really interested in hybrid. Academic success was only, I say only, it's still significant, but 6%. So less concern about the ability to do the coursework, to pass the classes, to get the degree, the certification, than it was other things. I love that this is on here because I don't think it gets talked about enough, and that's mental or physical health. I honestly think it's underrated and underreported here. I think it's a bigger concern, and it may come into other things here, like the stress that comes from trying to finance your degree, or feeling like if you're a parent, especially if you're a single parent, the stress or anxiety or guilt over spending time doing schoolwork instead of spending time with your kids. Like, this is a real thing. And when we talk about holistically supporting these learners, mental health is huge, and the stress of going back to school, and especially if you've been out for a while, you maybe feel out of place, you don't know who to ask for what. Anything you can do to chip away at that, mental stress and strain is big, and I really think it's underrepresented here. Yes. Oh, 2 questions, please.
I just had a question about the cost.
Yes.
Did you tease that out anymore to see if the cost financing are barriers as simple as, we know that there are students who stop out because they have a $500 bill at the university, for instance. It's not a full tuition bill. It might be some bill with Res Life or whatever the case might be, and they've got a hold on their registration, so they just stop, and the next thing you know, 4 years have gone by. Did you tease that out at all?
We have not yet. We're working through that, and as we have more learners who raise their hand and ask that, that's when we have more opportunities to ask follow-up questions. But I've flagged that as something I think is really important to understand, because if we can isolate, for example, it is that $500 bill that went unpaid, then circling back to what some of these institutions who have opted in have done, it said up to $600, we'll just waive it and we'll forgive that. It's huge. So part of what we're doing, I love you asked this question, is trying to get down to peel back the layers, peel them back, peel them back. And we want to be able to bring things to you in the future, such as if you did forgive up to $600 worth, it will impact, we anticipate, this many people. That to me is really actionable, and it gives you as an institution has fiduciary responsibilities as well, making good kind of cost-benefit analysis on where to make those concessions and where to be flexible with students, because it really should make a difference, right, to students. And sometimes it's a small amount, but which small amount and at what point in the journey? So I love that question. We're going to keep peeling back those layers and hope to bring more of those like down granular things, because we want to give you something that's really clear and very, very actionable, and that you can trace that back to which students maybe would have gone somewhere else or just would have stayed and stopped out had you not been maybe flexible with some of those policies. Great question. Was there another question? Okay. All right. This is a very recent quote in the last couple of weeks. Oop. And it's just from one of your learners. I'll read it just because if you're way in the back and forgot your glasses, I got you covered. It's just hard to find people to help you. It's almost like it's filled with people who don't care. So that was really frustrating when I went there being the institution, I frankly don't know which one, to try to get help. So if I have someone, in my corner, that is a huge stress reliever. There's so many things I think we can pull out of this quote. One is, I know everybody in this room is not in education because it's your pathway to being a millionaire. You're all here because you're mission-driven. You believe in the power of education. You advocate for that every day. So I know you care, but the perception is that nobody cared about me as an individual. It's frustrating to try and get help. So I'm trying to, again, get to things that are actionable. How can we make these people feel like people who are individuals who are seen and heard and can get help? So eliminating friction to those pathways to getting help is huge. So if I have someone in my corner, that's a huge stress reliever. So in this case, it's a success coach, but that person could be you. It could be someone on your team. So every person you have a little extra time to invest in, to sit down with, to talk with, it makes just a huge difference. So following that thread, these are the top 3 things thus far, and it'll probably stay consistent, but we might find a 4th and a 5th that are statistically relevant we want to bring up later. The 3 things we hear most often when we talk to these learners. Number 1, what steps do I need to take in order to return? They're stuck. They don't really know how to get unstuck. They need help. They need a pathway. They need a navigation. They need a channel, somebody to walk with them and just get them unstuck. So I always think of things like, what's the next right thing we can do? And it may be small, but what do I need to do? There's so many steps that get easily confused. How do I overcome my low GPA? So a lot of people are out there, they sometimes stopped out but did not withdraw, and they have a low GPA below 2.0, and there are certain policies related to that. So they want to know, okay, how do I do that? There's a sense of accountability there, but also agency, but also a lack of just understanding of how to take the next step. How many classes do I have left? This is a big one. They want to know, what does the light at the end of the tunnel look like? How long will my educational journey be to get there? What might that look like? So one of the things that we have seen is the longer someone is stopped out, the credit hours, the learners often think, I have, for example, 30 credit hours, they're all going to transfer. We all know that that often isn't the case. We just can't. If they're off catalog year, if it's been a long time, sometimes they're required to repeat certain courses. So that's one of the things to think about, and one of the things we'll talk about in a moment as well. But these are the top 3. So I like to think about things that are kind of immediately flexible in how we think about immediate, but really achievable, that are high impact, but low cost type policy changes. We're not asking anyone to think about changing their admission process to fold these people in and make broad sweeping changes. Hey, someday that might be great. We hope you're looking at everything. We hope our data and insights helps you look at that in a new way, a new lens. But there's certain things you can do. You can just ensure that your websites are readmission friendly, not admission friendly, they're readmission friendly. Do you have one website? You probably have the resources there and the content in almost all cases, but is it in one spot that's easy to find? Are they welcoming? A lot of students have said, I go to that website, I do not see myself reflected there, I had to dig, I gave up. So is it welcoming? Is it easy to access? Are they up to date? A lot of our success coaches get phone calls about, ooh, I went to this site, it's a 404 link, what do I do? So again, us having that one single point of contact in functional areas is huge, but also making that easy for students to do. I know, I used to manage this, I know how many web pages you all have, it's hard. But we go through for every institution we work with every few months and just check all the links and things. Like the more you just make sure your links and everything and the information are up to date, it just makes a huge difference. Provide deadlines and important dates. I love this idea of nudges functionally. I've seen it work. to really change student behavior over time. They have a lot going on. If you can just float up the things they need to do in the sequence they need to do it, that's wonderful. If you can do it in a timely manner to say, oh, you know, your intent to graduate, but even way before that, your FAFSA is due and this and this, can you nudge them? Do you have the technology or the ability to do that? Give really clear instructions for application. It might be clear if you're 18 and have a parent who went to college. May not be as clear if you're 45, maybe ESL, who knows what your circumstances are. Clearly list links to the application, student services, and program information. So that's 3 different areas. And have contact information for assistance. All right, I think we have time for this really quickly. I want all of you to think about, if you were to take out your phone, because most of this population uses their phone extensively, if you take out your phone and you had to get to your readmission page, how many clicks would it take you to get there? So I won't have us do it because it'll take a minute. Everybody's kind of, I see some nervous giggling, okay. Now, here's my very healthy challenge to you. If you're looking for an answer or to buy something on the web, how many clicks before you give up? 2. All right. All right. We're in the home stretch. All right. So I want everybody to listen. I'm going to play a clip from you. This is an actual learner. Her name is Marilyn, and she failed 2 of her classes while on academic probation and is just unsure about how to substantiate her SAP appeal.
So my the big reason why I'm not, I guess I'm not enrolled currently, is because I was on academic probation, and then I failed both my courses. So my financial aid was revoked, and I have to, and in order for me to submit an appeal, I need to substantiate the appeal. And all I have right now is a therapist, so I don't really have any way to substantiate it. On top of that, the wording was really vague, so I wasn't really sure what they would need anyways, in terms of paperwork.
So here's the ask for you to think about. This is something we found that is really impactful, just simplifying the SAP process and the requirements. So if you're asking students or these learners prior to coming back to substantiate, just think about how possible that is. Sometimes we've seen policies that ask someone who has experienced homelessness to go back to the shelter and get a report, or to the police department and to get a report to substantiate their homelessness situation. Same thing could be true for medical or mental health. The latter of those 2, some people just are really uncomfortable and just won't do it, and then they can't substantiate their appeal. So things like instituting policies that simplify that, allowing returning students the opportunity to explain how they plan to be successful this time. We found that when institutions adopt this simple change to be highly effective, it also tells you they're thinking about this. They want to be successful. They know the same kind of circumstances or experience or effort may not carry them through to success. So it really does challenge them to think about accountability and gives you this sense of, okay, they have a plan. I feel good about this. By the way, a lot of these large online institutions, that's all they require. So if you have a student and you're requiring them to substantiate this appeal, and then there's a school that doesn't, sometimes you'll just lose that student because the friction is less. Support returning students by eliminating requirements on things like proof of hardship, doctor's notes, death certificates. Folks, sometimes those are hard to get, and sometimes people don't know where to start to get them. Providing really clear instructions for appeals on the website, on your SAP policy, deadlines, contact information, and a link to submit those applications. Here we go. Another thing we found to be kind of, I would consider lesser effort, high impact, is providing a degree audit and transcript evaluation before the learner applies. And this can be unofficial, and also things like just giving learner the maximum number of transfer credits, which helps them decide to apply. So the other thing is timing. I know staffing is challenging. The mini grants that came from OSHE have been amazing. The way you all have leveraged them has been truly inspiring. I mean that honestly, because it's been so surgical to move the needle. So it's things like providing that unofficial transcript evaluation within 1 week. The student it's inertia. They're a body in motion. Let's keep them going. Any longer than that, sometimes you might lose them. You might lose their interest. You might lose them to another path. Instill confidence in the learner. That's one of the things our success coaches work on. I won't say more than anything, but it's in the top 2 or 3 items that are kind of like soft skills or just mental, emotional health things. They want to know that they can do it, and they also want to know to expect when they can be admitted. Offer self-service transfer credit tools. Most of these adult learners love that. We all are happy internet shoppers. We know what we're doing, right? Give them something that they can do that's self-service. It helps if it works really well and it's seamless. That's great. And again, contact information for live assistance if they get stuck. And then help future students understand the fastest way to graduate with a degree plan. This is huge for them as well. Just again, being able to give them that kind of North Star, that shining light, that light at the end of the tunnel, and they can plan for that. They can back into that plan. All right, I know we are just about at time. Want to kind of leave us on a high note. This is Jacob. Jacob talked with a success coach. This success coach, Michaela, had been with ReUp less than a month. So I love this clip. His background is that he's 28 years old. He's working full-time as an account clerk, and he plans to return as soon as possible, but he really needs to take one class at a time. His motivation was to increase his salary and or his career opportunities, but his barriers are he's struggling with the online application process. So this is our last clip of the day.
So what am I walking away with this meeting? I'm walking away knowing that the woman I spoke with today, Michaela, is very caring and concerned for my education and wants me to be able to succeed and is willing to help me, take the steps that I need to get the ball rolling with getting back into school. And I don't know if you're going to success coach me all the way through the course or all the way through my time at that school, but I appreciate your help in sending me links and stuff, making it easier for me, and that's what I'm taking away from this meeting, is that somebody's going to actually take the time to just go out of their way to just help me, and that's pretty cool.
All right. That is all I have, but I am here for any and all questions. Thanks, everyone.
Hi, Josh Powers, Provost William Patterson University. Thank you for your reflections. I was moved by your comment, the 3 questions students had. Third one, which was, how many more courses do I need to take? And I'm creating an archetype here. The student you're talking with got 95 credits, 75 credits. And the conversation is framed around, well, this is how many more courses it would take to get your bachelor's degree. Do you have some examples from other states or other institutions in other states who've been particularly effective of looking at that candidate and say, they deserve an associate's degree right now. Here's how to do it.
Yeah, I don't know that I have specific ones that I can point to, but I can tell you we're very mindful of that, and we balance that against, our kind of work with OSHE in this case and the 17 institutions. So our job really is to find what's most important to the learner, and sometimes we don't ever make decisions, first of all, on things like admissions. We don't get involved with financial aid packages and things like that. But what we do and what we view our role is at ReUp is to say, okay, Jacob, I see with everything you've told me, we're going to see what the institution will take in terms of credits back, anything you have to take over, you're going to transfer credits if you feel you need to transfer. What are the different paths that are useful to you and are acceptable to you? Is the most important thing to you, Jacob, finishing faster? Is this opportunity that you're looking at in your current job or role or field, is the associate's degree going to get you there? In which case, you can start there. We think that's great. If you have a longer-term plan, if it's mixed with that intrinsic motivation, I want to finish what I started, you're near completer, here's how close you are to a bachelor's. In a future state, we will be able to tie that to things like employment and regional economies and what you would likely make and those sorts of things. We're not there yet as a company. We're trending that way. But what we really try to do is say, what are your goals, Jacob? Here's the paths we view for you. And what the institutions tell us is that the learners we work with through success coaching show up with very informed questions. And so they usually know exactly what they need to do, who they need to talk to, how many credits they likely will have be accepted by the institution, the cost, and something about the timeline. And so we try to also, I haven't touched on that, try to lift some of that load for you, and we can only do that by getting to know the statewide policy and opportunities really well, and then each individual institution's policies, financial aid. Again, we don't get involved in packages and decisions like that, but hope that answered your question in that we're kind of agnostic where they go associates, certificate, 4-year, even boot camp. Hey, that's great. We really just try to pair that student up where they are with the support, time, and financial ability they have to get them on that path. I'm not sure that exactly answered your question, but that's how we view our role.
A little earlier in your presentation, one of your data points suggested that, and those that are returning, that a significant portion were looking to do a degree completion, and a significant portion were looking to do a certificate completion. Mm-hmm. What were the differences in their evaluating why they were choosing a certificate versus a degree?
Mm-hmm. Yes, some of that is anecdotal. Again, as we learn more, we'll try and bring more granular information back. Sometimes it's about time. So many of these adult learners are motivated by the path that will take them to completion, whatever completion means in the shortest amount of time. And sometimes they may have 80% of what they need for a certificate or for maybe associate, but that drops way down, especially if they're going to change their field of study to go something like a bachelor's degree. Often we found if the certificate could be correlated positively to something like that additional bump in pay, that additional advancement at work, that was their motivation, and that was great. Some of these folks are intrinsically motivated, are a little bit more focused on a 4-year degree. That's a little anecdotal. Again, as we gather more data, we'll put a finer point on that, but some of it was more related to, hey, if I can complete this faster, and or I already know because I've connected this is what I've been told by my employer that I need in order to take on this additional responsibility or have higher income. Good question.
One or two more questions?
Thank you for your presentation today. You had mentioned that texting was very effective. Could you share a little bit more about how you utilize texting to engage students?
Absolutely. So just generally speaking across multiple companies, what I've seen is like the read rate for email we all kind of know is dropping, but I want to caution you on abandoning it altogether. Students do read emails still, but in many cases you may be trying to reach out to them through their old university alias email, which they either don't check anymore or don't have access to anymore. So one of the things we do as a partner is we append that information so that we get good contact information. So I don't want anyone to abandon email. It still can be quite useful. There's a lot of noise. I think that noise went way up during the pandemic because everyone was off campus and so many things arrived via email. You may not always have their mobile numbers, and my generation didn't change their cell phone number this much. My nephew changes at least once a year. So if you think you have their last mobile number, if it's more than 12 months old, you probably don't. The read rate is nationally, just from a marketing perspective, around like 94% or so for SMS messages. Think about the ones, even the ones you receive on your phone if they're unsolicited. You look at them because there's really no way not to until you opt out of that sort of thing. But especially if they know it's coming from ReUp or for you, the college or university, there's interest there. And there's a familiarity there. And the response rate, because it's so fast, and if you catch them in the moment where they read it, and one of the things we've seen work really well is give them 2 or 3 quick decisions, like almost like a decision tree, you know. For example, we start out and say, hey, this is who we are. We're reaching out on behalf of, X college, university, or X initiative. We'd love to know if you're interested in returning to college. And we'll give them discrete choices, and then maybe 4 is other. And immediately, also you can start collecting data that's actionable. So if you send text messages to 10,000 students, you're gonna have a pie chart within 24 hours or less. Response rate's really high, and you will have trends that you can act on from there. And so I encourage you to think about decision trees that are simple, even if it's a person at first, and then it moves to some kind of technology. But we find people are responsive. We do experiment a lot with times of day and days of the week to send. I encourage that. I can share what we've seen be successful. But so many people just live on their phones. It's part of meeting them where they are. And it's much more likely to get through in many cases than email, especially if you're working off an old list. And some colleges and universities have the ability to invest in appending that list for missing contact information. Some don't. SMS has just been tremendously helpful because more people are likely to read it. Many, many people will respond. You'd be surprised how many coaching sessions happen via text. This isn't really new, but it surprised me when I joined ReUp. And you think about it, sometimes what you need is just answers. Just get me unstuck. Give me and you can send links, and then you can track, over time which links are clicked, those sorts of things. And then you have this kind of virtuous cycle of them getting what they need just in time. Some people want to sit down and have a call with a coach, and they find that meets their needs. And some people say, you know what, just get me unstuck. I need this information. I haven't yet heard from this person. Can you help me? So it's that immediacy that really helps because it fits within their lifestyle, which is generally really full. So I hope that's helpful. Happy to give you other things that I know that are more detailed. Okay, all right. Thank you, everyone, so much.